So about a week ago, I got new-ish, a new bunch of parts for a keyboard in the mail. Oh, so I had already had the keycaps for a while because I'd ordered those off of Amazon, and that takes like 2 days to get to me. But basically, I had gotten the case, the board itself, the switches, and the plate in the mail. So basically, when it had shipped from AliExpress, because that's where I ordered it from, oh, they had shipped it all out separately, consolidated it at one of their warehouses, and then shipped it all together. So it all got to me about last week. So I've had it for about a week now. And I've been messing around with it, playing like various games on it, doing like a couple things that I normally do here and there on it when I've been gaming with it for the most part, because that's kind of the main purpose I got it, but also to mess around with. So, and then, what was it? So I had gotten it Wednesday. So when I put it together, it has hop swap sockets in it already, so it was pretty simple to put together. It took me like an hour to do it, and I was pretty surprised by that. So when I first put it together, I was kind of experimenting with the plate, like, do I really need this? Blah, 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 blah. So I initially put the switches into the board without the plate on. And then after about a little bit, I noticed that like the stability with the plate is kind of worth it to have it there. And I know a lot of people have recommended a plate, and I can see especially why now. But so I ended up going back around and putting the plate on and then slipping the keys in that way. And so it's been a lot better now since I did that. The other thing that I noticed about it is when I was screwing the board in. So when you get the XD 75, whether it be the RE or the AM, they recommend like searching for GH60, getting like a 60% case for it. And that's kind of what I went for. And since there were LEDs on the bottom, I got a transparent one so that you could like see the underglow from it. And it diffuses it pretty well through the sides. But so I'd gotten that. So I've only got this board held in by like 3 screws because that's where the screw holes line up. And so I haven't included like any foam that other people use. This is kind of my first fully custom mech build. So I've had the ErgoDox Easy for like a year plus, and I wanted something that would provide me with like a full-ish keyboard, easily accessible for certain like roguelike games like Caves of Quud. So this kind of fills that niche pretty well. So kind of starting from the reverse, I guess. So when I was testing it with Caves of Quud on stream a couple days later, on that Friday stream, I really didn't have any problems with it. There were some awkward like key mapping things that were kind of weird, like being as you've got the middle column there of like 3 stacks of keys that like are arrow keys and whatnot right in the center, giving you that kind of split like feel. The B key's on the other side of that, and that is one of the diagonal movement keys for Caves of Quud and most other roguelikes. So it's kind of like you're reaching over to get to the diagonal, depending on how much you use that, which is optimal, and I still don't quite use it as much as I probably should, but that's neither here nor there. But that wasn't too much to like worry about. Other than that, most of the letter keys, which you're going to use pretty regularly, are pretty accessible. And then the F keys are a layer away pretty much. And this was using the default QWERTY layout. So when I first tested it on stream, I didn't have like a specific gaming layout that I had set up. I was using the standard QWERTY layout. And I'll touch on my gaming layout later on and what I did there. I haven't quite tested that yet, but it basically lines up with what I've been using with the ErgoDox for gaming. But other than that, like playing FPS games and things like that have been pretty decent. It's been a good experience, and I knew I wanted to do like a sort of gaming layout so I could put some of the other modifier keys that are used into more easily accessible layer places. So as I was testing it on stream and a couple other times while doing other normal grinding that I do, I kind of figured out what keys I needed access to and things like that, or the keys that would be nice to have access to, and better placement of certain other keys so that I could figure that in. And but other than that, the default QWERTY layout is actually pretty decent from the get-go for gaming. So like I've tested Skyrim, tested Halo, Duke Nukem on stream, and they did pretty well. It felt nice. It wasn't much different from the Ergo docks, except for the fact that it's not quite staggered. It's not staggered at all for the fingers, like the Ergo docks is. So you're reaching less for like that WASD fingering, but at the same time you don't have the I didn't have the thumb cluster that I could use for like space and modifier stuff. But it worked pretty well from the get-go, like I said. From there, there were a couple different times off stream that I played as well, like Stellaris. And I don't really use many hotkeys in Stellaris other than like the M and space key. So it's like I'm just tapping like two keys and those are right above each other in the default key layout. So it was pretty easy to mess with. Oh, the other things about it is messing with the colors, hues, and things like that, like I did on stream a couple different times. It's actually really simple, and resetting it for like reflashing the firmware, again, that's like the default function layer that it comes in, and it's like a simple, quick keystroke to get to and do. I haven't messed around with the default layer at all, but I have messed around with adding another layer for like typing Unicode. So for those that don't know, the Deseret alphabet, invented by Brigham Young, is in the Unicode standard. And so what I had done is I had set up a layer that would overlay over the default QWERTY keys, or in my case, Dvorak sometimes, a layer that would be able to put in those Unicode codes and type out those characters. Because the way the firmware does it is you tell it what mode it's in, whether it's Mac, Linux, Windows, and from there what it does is it knows the key combination it needs to do, and then you give it the code for the Unicode that you want if you're using a Unicode map, and then it'll type that in and it'll spit out the Unicode character that you need. And that's what I had done. The thing I had done before that, though, is adding a Dvorak layer. So I had Dvorak in sort of the same split format. There are some keys that I'm missing that I don't have access to quite so easily, like on my Ergo docs. So some of the keys are actually in the center clusters there and not quite off on the side like I normally have it. So there's that. It is kind of weird to have like an enter key that's a standard key size, but I've kind of gotten used to it. So other than that, most of the games I've played have basically been FPS games and like not hotkey-ish heavy strategy games. I'm still kind of working on it and working from there. So for the first week, I've had a really good impression of this keyboard. And I've done a little bit of tweaking, so... Okay, we're off to the races. You guys take care of those boys. I'm gonna speed walk my way up here and go talk to these. Why do you always do this? Bad guy! Bad guy! Dude, that was not nice. No! So this is what my key map layout looks like so far. There was some tweaking I did do with the default QWERTY layer so that I could move between like a couple of my other layers. Oh, this is what I have laid out. So some of this I haven't quite applied or given anything, but you've got the QWERTY and then the Dvorak. So initially this function layer was actually right after QWERTY, and I moved that up here so that I could have access to those function keys that layered on top of it in the rest of my key layers, except for like the JP Japanese one, which I haven't put together quite yet. So this is mostly the default one. I have kind of outlined this, like the QWERTY layout, what it is currently. I got rid of the caps lock key and I put escape in there. I might put caps lock up here, but I think I want to keep it as escape. And I might turn this key into a tap dance key for caps lock. But other than that, basically I'm keeping escape there and escape up here as well. I haven't enabled tap dancing just yet. I'm still working with a couple other things and layers and experimenting with how that would work out. So another thing of note too is the game in the corner here. The 2-game one, it was initially the 2 Deseret one when I'd put that in. So this goes to my gaming layer now, and I've moved that to Deseret 1 to the function layout up here. And I've got a lot of open keys now that I can work with that way. So like I said, I haven't messed with it too much because like over here in the function, so it's a momentary key that turns it on. I've left the RGB toggle in place. I've left all the RGB underglow controls in place because it's pretty easy to reach from like the one key to hold it down and then like switch around up and down. So it's not too much of a hassle, and I've left the F keys alone so far. I've thought about squeezing the F keys in so that they're a little bit more consistent, but somewhat that would break some of the consistency on the other side as well. So, at first when I did the gaming layer, well, no, let me go back up here. So the Dvorak one, I basically put in the default Dvorak keys. You've got your dot, comma, quote, all that stuff up here. And I actually left the center cluster here be as it is by default because I really didn't feel a need to move those keys. But on my Ergo docs, this backslash key is actually in off on the side with my pinky where I can kind of reach over and get it. So it will be kind of weird to like have to reach into the center and get that one. But I think I can adjust if I really have to on this layer all too often, which I don't think I will. But I believe, no, the question mark would be up in the side here. So it would be over here. So yeah, I was messing with that. Again, the enter key is kind of weird to work with because I'm not used to it being so small, or the shift key and things like that, but those are things to get used to and adjust to. The only time I'm used to like such a small shift key is when I'm using my gaming layer and I have it set up that way. So I haven't updated what it looks like, this like particular layer looks like. But the assumed default is the QWERTY layer underneath, or but it's yeah. So with the number of characters that there are in the Deseret alphabet, I had to use 4 rows, so I covered up the numbers and the letters. I didn't really have to like reach over here because there were, with there being 40 characters, there were enough in like the 5 main letter columns that I didn't have to reach off into the side, so I could possibly put punctuation in there down the road. But I've got the whole set here running Unicode key codes so that it types them out. I've got a different header file that has all of these characters defined, and I think that's what's taking up like a huge portion of my firmware space, because currently as the firmware stands, when I compile it, it fills up about 87.95% of the firmware space that it has. Luckily, because I've got the space reserved for all the layouts, like this one, whether I change a key here or there from a transparent key or whatever, it doesn't care about that. It's still the same space, so I can define other keys. If I figure out how many layers I can have total within that space, then I can work with that and go from there. So it should be pretty easy, but turning on and off some features will take up more space than others. So the next thing is the gaming layer and what I've done with that. So what I did from this default QWERTY, like I had mentioned before, is I'd moved these whole 5 letter columns over. So I still can take advantage of the full keyboard for games like Postal 2 and others that require it, but I've also added in keys here and there with easier access to them. So I've got the left control up here right next to left shift, and the left control down below if I ever want to reach down, which it's easier to reach to the side with the way, in my feeling, per se, that I think I will prefer that one rather than reaching down, particularly when I'm holding a key down and I'm basically crouching and moving. I added a grave up here so that I've got easy access beyond the escape key, because on my Ergo docs, I've basically got the escape right next to the 1 where I've moved that over, because I've done a similar thing there, except I've got the larger keys towards the center that have my J and T keys for like Morrowind for journal and stuff. And I've just put those down on the bottom here because I shouldn't need that too often, but it's an easy reach from there. Don't worry, it's fine. So along with that, I kept both space keys basically the same on this side, so I've got 2 space keys that I can mess with. For the gaming layer, I don't think I'll do any tap dancing, because with how that can be when playing, I'm afraid of it registering like a double tap or some sort of tap dance move, and with certain holds and things like that, it would be kind of messy. So they're all standard keys on my gaming layer. I've got F5 and F9 because I was searching around for like quick save, quick load stuff, and those seem to be some of the common ones. And if not, should be able to somewhat remap them. Then I've got the square brackets here, because for some games that is moving between items in your inventory. So if you play like Hexen or Postal 2, Postal 4, those 2 keys are used for like moving back and forth between items. I haven't messed with these 2 keys, but I might down the road. And then I left this side kind of standard in most of the letter columns because I want access to these keys, and some of these keys have some functionality, and so I didn't want to get rid of them like I kind of covered them up on the Ergo docs, and sometimes don't quite know where they are on the Ergo docs. But so other than that, I've got the bottom key here that goes back to QWERTY instead of back to the game layer, and then I've got, of course, the to Dvorak layer, and then the function modifier key, and then the GUI key, super key, whatever. So one thing that was also a consequence of moving that column over is I lost a column in the center there, and I moved the arrow cursor keys over. So they don't line up with the arrow keys as it stands on the keyboard, but they're moved over one. I could possibly move them back over one and move the enter key to where the up and down keys are in that column. And that might be an option, but I want to see how it feels first before I decide to do that. But so I've still got the arrow keys for like certain functions like that might require that. So overall, it's a pretty functional layer, and I just have to fill in the Japanese side because the way the source code works on Japanese layers, Japanese code in QMK, the key codes, they map to standard letter keys, but at the same time, there are certain checks that check for other things that I will probably fill in everything in with and then go from there. But yeah, that's basically the layout. I'll probably be back later with like a few other tweaks that I've done to it that after working with it for a little bit, because I've kind of done the same thing with my Ergo docs. So on my Ergo docs, I've got multiple layers, and some of them I don't even use all that much. My emulator, so most of the tweaks that I've done have been to like the thumb cluster keys and what I'm working with, like I said. So I've got that space and then shift space, and then if I look at my gaming layer, there are no like tap dance, tap and hold keys at all. Because like I said before, that would probably be disastrous. But yeah, I've got most of the default layouts and whatnot layers, and a couple extras as well. So like the reset key up in here, because then it's easier to access rather than poking a pinhole. So yeah, that's basically kind of my mechanical keyboard layout, the XT75, and kind of some of where I took some of that from and all, so you can see that. I would highly recommend getting one, honestly, because whether it be for like gaming, because I got this so that it's easier to backpack than like 2/2 of an Ergo docs, but there are a couple other keyboards I'm looking at now too. But it's also, it was pretty budget friendly, so like when I picked up you're talking, what was it? $40, 15 for the 40 for the board, 15 for the switches, like 10 or 15 for the plate, 7 for the case, and then I think I paid like 16 for the keycaps, and then I've got a few blank keycaps on the way, because I've got a bunch of other keys turned around in weird orientations as placeholders until I get those keycaps in. But yeah, I would recommend getting yourself something like that, and if you've got any questions, I'm willing to ask. QMK does have a Discord where you can ask all kinds of questions and get help. Remember, guys, if you appreciate what you saw, if any of this helped you, you can scream at me on Discord, on Guilded, on any of the other chat things, on Matrix and whatnot. Links are down in the description. I believe I've even included my XMPP in there. Check it all out and drop a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think at all, any of that kind of stuff. And I'll see you in the next one.